You're listening to episode 66 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness researchers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Author and teacher Donald Altman joins us to speak about his new book, Clearing Emotional Clutter, Mindfulness Practices for Letting Go of What's Blocking Your Fulfillment and Transformation. Have you ever had your attention captured by an emotional Groundhog Day, when you get stuck spinning on a particular emotion? I have. And when it's a pleasant feeling, my tendency is to go with it. And when it's unpleasant, push against it, which only makes the feeling dig its heels in and stay put. Neither is necessarily a good long-term strategy for how we relate to our emotions. So what else might we do? Donald Altman is the author of Clearing Emotional Clutter, 1 Minute Mindfulness, and several other books about mindfulness. He is a practicing psychotherapist and former Buddhist monk, an award-winning writer and expert on mindful eating. He teaches in the neurobiology program at Portland State University. Our guest today is Donald Altman. Don, nice to speak with you again.
Oh, hi, Ted. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be on your program again.
So glad to have you. And the audience for this podcast might not have heard about your background, so I'm wondering if you could start us off by telling us a little bit about your story with mindfulness.
Well, I actually entered the field of mindfulness through mindless eating. And mindless eating is something that kind of haunted me, and I was an emotional eater and really didn't know how to moderate my food intake. And there was a time in my life I was going through some challenging issues, and a friend had introduced me to a monk and said, there's this monk I'd like you to meet. And that monk happened to be the Venerable U Thilananda, who was a Burmese monk in the Theravada Buddhist tradition. And I was so struck with his sense of availability and compassion, Ted. I had never really experienced anything quite like that. And when I went through this difficult time in my life, I had the opportunity to ordain. I found out that he was in this monastery, and I could ordain with him as a teacher. And I really wanted to deepen my own spiritual path and see if I could break out of some of these repetitive, habitual life patterns that I found myself caught in. And I also wanted to know, how did this man become like that? How does someone in our culture, could we transform our consciousness? And so I did ordain with him in the monastery, and I knew that because of my mindful eating, or because of my eating issues rather, that I didn't know if I could be a mindful eater, and it really kind of worried me. One of the things that the monks did was, we would get up at like 3:30 in the morning and to be chanting, and we'd start meditating very early, but we'd have a small breakfast from 6:30 to 7. We'd have lunch from about 11 to 12, and then you would actually take a vow as part of your ordination not to eat after 12 noon.
Right, that's it. Twice a day for you,
yeah,
as I remember.
Right. You could have a cup of tea later if you really needed it, but I was very concerned that I could not maintain that, and I knew that would be a big challenge for me. And then right after the ordination, which was a beautiful, 2.5 hour ceremony on this big grassy field, I went over to, went into the monastery with two other new monks. And they said, they pointed out this room where we were going to be staying, and there were 3 futons there. And I went in, and I just sat down on one. And then it kind of hit me, we a lot of times we have an idea of doing something and how great it's going to be. But I was sitting there. They'd shaved off my hair, and I had this saffron-colored robe on. And I started to think, oh, my God, what have I done? I call it Monk Spire's remorse. And and I really could have used food to soothe me. And that's in my history is what I would have done. And I looked to my left, and I couldn't believe what I saw. There was a little shelving unit, and it was just about 1.5 feet from my nose. And directly facing me was a giant Cadbury's chocolate bar. And I think, and my mind just grabbed onto that chocolate bar, and I really wanted that chocolate bar. In fact, my mind went into a war, because one part of me said, you need that chocolate bar. That'll make you feel better right now. And, you can soothe yourself with that. And the other voice said, wait, you just took this vow not to eat after 12 noon. You can't eat that chocolate bar. And I couldn't do what we might normally do in our culture, which is to, distract ourselves or just go off and get a chocolate bar, right? And at least temporarily quell that craving or that desire. I had to sit there and watch that war in my mind. At the same time, I was kind of glancing over, looking at these 2 monks, seeing would they know if I took the chocolate bar. And one of them crashed out, and he was lying. The other one was doing mantras with his meditation, his rosary beads, and so I just had to sit there. And after about an hour and a half, something very interesting happened, and I have since learned, because I've gotten this put me on a whole path of going back to school after I was in the monastery, became a psychotherapist, and I am now actually teaching an interpersonal neurobiology certificate program. So I started learning a lot about the brain. I didn't realize it, but suddenly, instead of being in that war, it was like there was a jolt, and I was just watching. I was just observing these parts of me in this war, and it gave me a sense of relief in that moment, and I just knew that somehow it's as if my container had gotten larger, and I was able to hold all of that, and that these thoughts weren't really in opposition. Sometimes we think that we're fighting something, and whether it's good, bad, pleasant, unpleasant, or whatever it is, but what I saw as a reading, there wasn't anything really in opposition. This was just all part of a larger experience, and I was able to observe it. And so in that moment, I knew I could get past the part of me that I could honor, rather, the part of me that wanted that chocolate bar and that was emotionally needy. And at the same time, I could also honor and follow my vow that these were not really in opposition. It gave me a completely different perspective on the mind. And as I started to observe in my time at the monastery, started to observe the mind more deeply, it profoundly changed how I thought about things. And I left the monastery, and as I said, when I went back to grad school and started a whole other career, and my writing turned in the direction of spiritual writings. By the way, I also learned that this monk, Uthilananda, who had this wonderful compassion, availability, that the favorite thing he loved to teach was the loving kindness meditation, and that he had developed that part of himself, that sense of being welcoming and hospitable and available to others, and that he had profoundly changed his brain, actually. And one of the ideas I bring into this Clearing Emotional Clutter book is that you actually do rewire your brain by actually where you place your attention and the thoughts you have. I mean, it's very fundamental that how we use our attention affects us at the cellular level and at the brain level.
Yeah, it's interesting that when I would be on retreat at a Theravadan retreat center, like kind you're describing, and people there would agree to some of the same rules that the monastics live by, and one of those would be eating only twice a day and being finished with that by noon. So there'd be a breakfast and there'd be a lunch. And observing people just piling mountains of food they could never possibly finish, knowing that, oh my gosh, there's one meal we're going to miss later on.
Right.
And not being able to finish those and dumping out so much of it into at least the recycling, but still wasting so much food just because there wasn't that same just awareness of, wait a minute, what am I doing here?
Yeah. Oh, and Ted, I should mention I did not eat the chocolate bar. Some people might be wondering. I didn't finish the story. I didn't eat it, and but I actually thought at the moment that somebody set me up. I really had that thought and belief that somebody must have put this here just to tempt me and to torture me.
Shortest monastic career ever.
Right.
So let's talk about your new book. You're a very prolific author, and for those who are listening to the podcast, please be sure to check out the episode page for this episode, because I do have quite a number of Don's books available there. You just click on them, it takes you to Amazon. This one, Clearing Emotional Clutter, tell us a little bit about emotional clutter, what it is, why we should be aware of it.
Okay. Emotional clutter can profoundly affect our lives, and I see it as anything really that can be keeping us from being present in this moment, and that takes us out of a sense of harmony and out of a sense of balance. And it could be old things from our past that we've been conditioned to think or believe. It could be family clutter, and we all have some of that. And it could be the new kinds of stress that you encounter daily. And all of these things can have a tremendous impact. And I think we can actually liberate ourselves from a lot of that and transform our awareness. And that we are here, I think, to awaken and experience joy, experience the complete continuum of all human experience, but not to be stuck in a state of misery and sadness, anxiety, which so many people are.
You talk about getting off the emotional elevator. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about what that is.
Sure. The emotional elevator is whatever can move our moods very quickly up and down. And I talk about this, and I even have a chapter about this in the book, but something good happens to you. Someone gives you a compliment, right? Maybe the elevator goes up, or you get that promotion you wanted, or you get some object that you've been saving up for, right? And that elevator goes up. So here's somebody pushing your external elevator. It's an external elevator button. Or what about the elevator going down? Things don't go your way. Your health, you got a health problem, or you're sick, or maybe your partner leaves you, you get divorced. I mean, this happened to me not too many years ago. Or you have thoughts in your head that say, I'm not good enough, or you're comparing yourself with others. What happens? So maybe it's just a friend ignoring your text, right? And your elevator goes down. And we are constantly trying to sometimes grab onto the up elevator, or that feels good, or avoid the down elevator for one reason or another. We don't like the down elevator. And sometimes, and again, these buttons are pushed by external and sometimes our internal button pushing of ourselves. So I think some people can get kind of addicted to that elevator ride, wanting it to go up all the time. And how can we start to release that elevator? I mean, it can be exhilarating, but I think it's also very exhausting to be stuck on this elevator ride. And so I believe that awareness of recognition of the button pushing and just finding space between the button pushing, expanding your awareness, is the ticket off of that elevator ride. And this can bring us a greater sense of joy, peace, calm, and harmony into our lives.
Yeah, it's important to note that this is not spiritual bypassing. We're not trying to avoid feeling what we're genuinely feeling in the moment. It's how we're receiving it, our relationship to it, that shifts over time.
Yeah. So we're not identifying with it as this is mine or this is defining me. This is a way of kind of just loosening the grip of that egocentric point of life, the I, the me, the mine, the mine, and that and never-ending ego show, right? That has us believe that we're this or we're that. We spend a lot of time believing we're somebody. I think we can spend some time believing we're nobody, or thinking we're nobody, and not buying into all of those thoughts. And actually, scientists have now been talking about how many thoughts we could have in the course of a day, and it's between, and this is really kind of interesting, between 25 thoughts per second to 75 thoughts per second. That would be, even if you took the low end, Ted, that'd be about 75,000 thoughts in the course of a day. And I want your listeners to think for a moment, how many of those thoughts tell you something profound about yourself? How many of those thoughts are accurate thoughts? And how many of those thoughts are maybe just conditioned, old, habitual thoughts that have repeated over time, or just reactive thoughts? You know, it's funny, the Buddha thought we could have up to 3,000 thoughts per second.
I could only have 2,000 myself. 3,000 seems like a stretch for my brain. Don, I'm wondering if you might be willing to lead us through just a short emotional clutter guided meditation.
Sure. No, I'd love to. And so this is a little bit of what I call stepping off the elevator meditation. And it's a process of letting the mind settle down and coming into the body's presence. So it's 3 steps, Ted. And so I want your audience to find a nice place where you can sit, it's quiet. And we're going to do this as an eyes wide open, everything wide open, senses wide open kind of meditation. A little different than if maybe you're used to closing your eyes, but give this a try and see if you can just go with that idea. So here we are, just sitting, just being. And we're going to start with just 3 nice breaths to get centered. For the first breath, I want you to breathe in, nice long inhale, and then exhale slowly, letting go of all the tension in the body, just letting it all drain out, all the tension and the tightness, even the negativity. Let's take a second breath. And now I want you to exhale all the thoughts of things from yesterday in the past, things that are already done with, finished, not here, but we're still thinking about them, sticking to us maybe. Let's take a third nice breath and exhale slowly all the things in the future, all the thoughts of things yet undone, unfinished. Let all of that go too. So now what I want you to do is, and this is really a wonderful meditation, if you could do it outside, is to cast, even if you're inside, just cast your eyes out as if you were looking at the horizon, kind of cast your eyes up a little bit, looking outward, even at the imaginary horizon, and emptying your mind. Let's see if you can just let it out there, let it, release it into the sky, into the clouds, maybe into a tree, if you can see a tree out there. Just looking without a thinker, just absorbed in the present. Let yourself be immersed and engaged in whatever it is, the beauty of the nature that is out there. And I want you to notice, even for a split second, maybe how there's a moment where the thought of the I just fades away. And there's just the observer, just the awareness of the horizon, the sky, the trees, and so on. And just that space between the thoughts, the bigger you, the you without boundaries. How wonderful. That's part 1. Part 2, and by the way, it doesn't matter if you have a lot on your mind. In fact, if you have a lot on your mind, this is a good time especially to do this meditation. It's better to stop in the middle of all those mental demands to do this. Okay, because we can look at the mind's resistance to being here, to just sitting. We can look at the mind's resistance also throughout the day. What are we resisting? Or would we rather be somewhere else? So just look at it all. Don't fight it. It's a great show, right? Be here with it. You might even think, oh, hello again, mind. Even noticing, appreciating that the mind is able to create all this, right? So we're not trying to force the mind away, but we're actually allowing it to be just as it is. And if you're feeling emotions, you could also notice where are those in the body. Get a sense of the body. Feel the body, the early warning system, letting you know if you're out of balance. And eventually, as you start to do this, start to watch the mind and how it moves, it might get the idea, well, this is no fun. You're not playing along with me like you used to, right? So you can it'll give up maybe a little bit, and you can just allow you to be and allow that spaciousness to grow. So no matter how long, part 3 of this is no matter how long or how often the mind breaks in, that's okay. Just remember to breathe, connect with your breath. Nice in breath. Exhale slowly. And there's no limit to how long or when you can do this. Even a minute is good enough. Just to break from the mind, the grip of the I, the me, the my, the mind, just to be present, expand to the bigger you. And when you're done, you can sit with some questions, which I recommend. Just asking yourself, where did the mind go? Where was the listener? Where was the voice in my head? Where's that at? And just come back. So the 3 steps again. And by the way, you can't fail at this. You're just being present here. This is like a mini meditation I just gave you. But the 3 steps: cast your gaze outward, be present, noticing the spaciousness, even for a moment where the mind is not there, where you're just merged. The observer and the observed become one for just a moment. And if you notice the mind, you can appreciate that. You don't have to fight it. Be diplomatic. And the 3rd thing is breathe. Feel your breath. It's like coming home. It's a safe place to come. And you can be present with the breath in the spacious awareness way. And then you could sit in silence for a little bit longer. So again, you can ask yourself, how did the analyzing critical mind get in the way? How did you manage to let it go, resist it? And you can start to notice, how does the internal committee of the I, the me, the my, the mind, color my daily experiences? And that's what this meditation is about, is to kind of loosen the grip a little bit and to notice that the mind is spacious, and it's without all those different colorations of that are added in by the personal perspective. So it's a process, and well, Ted, I think that will kind of just cover it.
Don, that was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Oh,
lovely
you're very welcome.
Exercise. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. So let's shift a little bit to emotional clutter, and maybe one of the ways in which it's caused, transitioning being one of the big ones. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
No, great. I'd love to. Transitioning is something that a lot of people are not really aware of how it can impact them. But when we're transitioning, and there are a lot of transitions, there are emotional transitions, there are physical transitions, there are energy transitions, even, for example, transitioning from wakefulness to sleep, major transition. But let me talk about transitions that move us from one place to another, for example. When we're physically transitioning, we don't know what's going to happen next. So let's say you're going to work in the morning or you're coming home at night, and that period of transition brings up a lot of uncertainty. And so what happens is it can increase feelings of anxiety and just put us in a more reactive state. And it's probably why a lot of people get upset when they're driving on freeways, they're transitioning. So what I recommend is to really become more aware of your transition, become more present, breathe with your transition, breathe while you're transitioning, limit the number of transitions you make in the course of a day. And so let's say you have several errands to run, for example. You might want to on one day, do 2 of the errands that are maybe in close proximity to one another, and maybe the other day do another 3. Even in work, see if you can stay with one project or one task that you're doing for a longer period of time, really allowing yourself to steep yourself into it and really get more present with it instead of just quickly transitioning from one thing to another, all that multitasking. So this brings in the idea of unitasking, devoting yourself 100% to whatever it is you're doing right now. And we actually have found that scientists have found that people are more not only they're more present, but they are more efficient. And students actually learn at a more deeper level than if they're just transitioning. They're on Facebook, then they're doing something else, studying a little bit. Each time you go back to that task, you have to reorient to it. And so the learning of students, for example, has been shown to be more superficial if they multitask. So it's a good idea to slow down in that way when we're transitioning. I want to mention one other kind of transition that's really critical is transitioning with those we care about. So this transition is important. When you're leaving, if you're leaving your family or you're leaving loved ones in the morning, for example, leaving is very much about closure and connection. Letting that person know how you will stay connected with them and having some kind of closure, and that might mean a hug. It might mean saying, oh, I hope you have a good day. I'll be thinking about you. But closure and connection when we're departing is a major transition. And then when we're entering a new space, and let's say whether it's you're entering the workplace or maybe you're coming back to home rather, returning or entering is about safety and inclusion. So feeling safe. So that might mean that it's important for, let's say you're on the computer and then one of your family members comes home, is to get off that computer and greet that person, or stop watching TV and really greet that person, make them feel safe and included. And that's what actually, that face-to-face connection is an important transition. Also wires up the part of our brain that helps us feel securely attached and connected to others.
And this may be a good transition, actually, to talk about developing friendships as a way to clear away emotional clutter we already have.
Oh, yeah. I think friendship is really important to not just wiring up empathy, and it really changes our brain in a very powerful way. But in fact, if I could share a little research that I always found very fascinating, Ted, was that if you do not have a good social network, they found that's as bad for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, being an alcoholic, and being obese. It really affects your health and your mortality. So it really is critical to have that friends in your life. And so I want people to think about how they could build what I like to think of as plant the seeds of trust, acceptance, and empathy in their life. I think these three are very important. You think about it, without trust, really, it's very hard to have a relationship. And it really can't be rushed either. But it can be damaged very quickly. I worked with a gentleman, I remember he just came to mind, who had an illness, and he withdrew, and he called it withdrawing into his cocoon because of the illness. And he wasn't able to participate in the family in the same way, and his wife took over a lot of the chores, but they never really talked about it. But they grew further apart, and he actually had to rebuild the trust with her when it was a long illness. When he came out, he didn't know how to reconnect, and so that's one of the things we talked about. Another thing is acceptance, which is how important acceptance is to nurturing friendships. Acceptance means that you can recognize the frailties of your friend and know that no one's perfect, and we have to be forgiving. And we can accept that the friend isn't going to do things just the way we want it or meet our expectations all the time. We also need to be happy for our friends and happy for just in general for people in our lives. This is actually a Buddhist practice called sympathetic joy, right? Being happy for others. And yeah, mudita, exactly. And how could we, even if somebody's not doing something that we think is, the path we think they should be on, and yet if they're happy, we could still show our support and happiness for them. And also forgiving of our friends at times when maybe they let us down, right?
As we would like to be forgiven when we're not always at our best.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That never happens, right? And then the third one is, of course, empathy is how we can learn to really connect with our friends, attune and link, and kind of let, empty our own cup. And I say that in the sense that, if you're always telling somebody about your needs and your issues and everything, right? Sometimes we need to empty our cup and listen. And it's a very key component of developing healthy friendships and supportive friendships.
In the book, you also have a number of exercises or lifestyle tools, is what you call them. Mm. And I'm wondering if you have a favorite one of those, which it might be, and why.
Well, I actually like the one, there's one called, I have a couple things that I really like. One is,
you can do more than one.
Okay, good. Then I'll start with the acronym HEAR, HEAR, which is about, because we're just talking about friendship, about how we can really listen in a more open and accepting way. And then I want to talk about fidelity to the moment, which I love. But this is an acronym, and it's the H stands for just holding your assumptions. So let's say you're having a dispute with somebody, or let's say it's even an argument. I think it's important to try to understand the other, and then we understand ourselves better. But H stands for holding your assumptions, even for a few moments, even for like 3 minutes. Could you put your assumptions and your beliefs aside and just listen to almost like an objective fact finder or an impartial witness or somebody might try to just notice things, notice what's happening, and just get curious. I think having an attitude of curiosity can really help, even with that most difficult person in your life. And everybody, when I speak around the country, I always ask, does anybody have a difficult person in your life? And I've yet to find somebody that didn't raise their hand, right? And so especially for that difficult person, it's important for us to do this, and to understand just that when you're looking in someone's eyes, you're looking at someone with 100 billion neurons. I mean, it's a very somebody with incredible rich experiences and actually more connections between those neurons than there are stars in the universe. So here's somebody, each of us, I believe, is the most unique person in the universe. The second thing, E, is enter the emotional world of the other person. So instead of contradicting somebody or saying, I don't see why you're angry here, or trying to get rational with them, allow yourself to enter their emotional world and try to understand, why is this important to them? Why do they feel this way? Okay. And this can help not just you understand that person, but help that person feel like, you're really paying attention. You're really listening. And so you want to notice the subtext. You want to notice the tone of the voice, not just what somebody's saying, but how they're saying it. What's their body posture? What are their facial expressions? Really allow yourself to experience what they're experiencing. The third part, the A, stands for absorb and accept. So allow yourself to be like a sponge that's absorbing. Sponges don't just slosh the water around from one place to another, but they absorb it. So absorb what you're hearing, and allow yourself to just accept it. Accept it. So this is where this person's coming from right now. Okay? Even if they're commenting on something about you, you could accept, well, this is what their experience is. Okay? The last part is reflect, then respect. The R means that, we have the capability, and mindfulness is wonderful because it allows us to look at what we're thinking. It allows us to look at our values and our ethics. So it allows us to reflect inwardly, and this might mean that you need to take some time, that you're not ready to respond, especially if you're going to respond with in an angry way or a defensive way, to allow yourself to even say to this other person, I want to think about this, and go and reflect on it. Think about what you've heard, and then respond with a sense of respect and kindness when you're ready. Okay, so those are 4, I think, very important ways that can actually, if an argument or something, a discussion is going off the rails, I would say think about shifting into this mode, and it can change what happens.
Yeah, it's very interesting that most of the acronym and the exercise, the process that you're doing, has to do with receiving. It's only at the very end that you actually say anything yourself.
Right, yeah. Well, it's true, and that's this whole idea of just, again, emptying your cup, letting go of your assumptions, letting go of your ego for a moment, and really listening. Very true.
Don, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, I love this, and I have a whole section of the book also about fidelity to the moment, or faithfulness to this moment, and how can we, and this is a wonderful way of clearing clutter, how can we appreciate the little things right here and right now? And the ordinary moments, those in-between moments that often we devalue or diminish, and we think, I'm more concerned about getting over there. I've got that meeting, or, I've got this goal. And we forget all the in-between moments, the little things. And so having some greater fidelity or faithfulness to this moment, walking when you walk, sitting when you sit, eating when you eat without the TV and all these other distractions on, having a conversation with a person, just with that person, without cell phones and other interruptions and distractions. And, when we could do that, I want to refer to this wonderful poem that Mother Teresa wrote that I love. And she said, my daughter, she said, be faithful in the small things, and that's where your strengths lie. And I think that noticing the small things can bring a tremendous amount of fulfillment and joy into our lives. And we need to practice being faithful in this moment. I think the more that we do it, the more we will continue to really deepen our mindfulness practice.
Beautifully said, Don. Thank you so much. For those who are listening who want to find out more, you can find out about Don's work at his website, mindfulpractices.com. Again, our guest today, Donald Altman. Don, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Ted. Bless you for this work that you're doing, and bless all your audience, too.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.